I had now an opportunity of observing him, and found him of a very marked physiognomy. His face was a strong, very strong aquiline, with high ridge of the thin nose and particularly arched nostrils, with lofty domed forehead, and hair growing scantily around the temples, but profusely elsewhere. His eyebrows were very massive, almost meeting over the nose, and with bushy hair that seemed to curl in its own profusion. The mouth, so far as I could see it under the heavy mustache, was fixed and rather cruel-looking, with particularly sharp white teeth. These protruded over the lips, whose remarkable ruddiness showed astonishing vitality in a man of his years. For the rest, his ears were pale, and at the tops extremely pointed. The chin was broad and strong, and the cheeks firm, though thin. The general effect was one of extraordinary pallor. As the Count leaned over to me, his hands touched me. I could not repress a shudder. It may have been that his breath was rank, but a horrible feeling of nausea came over me, which, do what I would, I could not conceal. The Count, evidently noticing it, drew back, and with a grim sort of smile which showed more than he had yet done of his protuberant teeth, sat himself down again on his own side of the fireplace. We were both silent for a while, and as I looked towards the window I saw the first dim streak of the dawn coming. There seemed a strange stillness over everything, but as I listened, I heard as if from down below in the valley the howling of many wolves. The Count's eyes gleamed, and he said, "Listen to them, the children of the night. What music they make." Seeing, I suppose, some expression in my face strange to him, he added, "Ah, sir, you dwellers in the city cannot enter into the feelings of the hunter." Then he rose and said, "But you must be tired. Your bedroom is all ready, and tomorrow you shall sleep as late as you will. I have to be away till the afternoon, so sleep well and dream well." With a courteous bow, he opened for me himself the door to the octagonal room, and I entered my bedroom. I am in a sea of wonders. I doubt, I fear, I think strange things which I dare not confess to my own soul. God keep me, if only for the sake of those dear to me. Jonathan Harker's Journal. Welcome, my friends, to the Dracula Podcast. Yes, this is the Dracula Podcast, where we are critically analyzing and analytically comparing Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula with the television series on NBC by the same name. I'm Frank Stella, and I'm glad that you came back for more. And glad that you're back again for some more conversation about our favorite story, Dracula. And meanwhile, quote-unquote Dracula aired episode 2 on Friday evening, and it's called A Whiff of Sulphur. And there you have it, episode 2. What did you think? It's certainly getting curiouser and curiouser. A real lot seems to be going on in this show, and it's kind of hard to keep track of it all sometimes. I almost get the sense that they're trying to throw so many things at us to keep us from getting bored with too simple of a storyline, but it can be a little bit difficult to follow. But essentially, you've got this Order of the Dragon, and last week I was calling it the League of Dragons. I'm not really sure where that came from. My brain, apparently, I must be in comic book mode or something, but the Order of the Dragon, and they're in business for their oil and gas, and also they have their vendetta against the vampires, who apparently have been in London and around, and are in London still to this day and since forever, I don't know. So there's this kind of feud going on between vampires and the Order of the Dragon. And Dracula is kind of at the forefront of the vampire team. Interestingly, there was a scene that took us back to that Dracula's revival scene in Romania in 1881, I think that's what it said on there. It showed us a little bit more of that conversation initially when Dracula first came out of there, and he had that conversation with Van Helsing. More on that, I'm not really sure. At least in this particular Dracula adaptation, they're obviously changing a lot of things around. Not really sure how Dracula got there in the first place, because in True Dracula by Bram Stoker, you're either a vampire that's quote-unquote alive and well, or, technically undead, whatever that means even, but, you're fine. You're not, stuck in limbo and your vampire body is rotting, as was Dracula's in the TV show. You're either a dead human whose soul has been released, or you're a vampire going about his or her business, if you will. So I'm not really sure how Dracula got in that spot to where, his vampire body was just kind of dormant and dead and rotting, but all he needed was some blood to revive him. Not really sure how he got into that state, but whatever the case is, it was Van Helsing that revived him, and this is a really kind of new thing, because in most Dracula adaptations, it's always at least hold on to the fact that Van Helsing and Dracula are at odds. They're fighting each other. They're fighting the good or bad fight. But here you've got this alliance between Van Helsing and Dracula. Turns out this Order of the Dragon had killed both one of Van Helsing's or some of his family members, as well as Dracula's wife back in the 1600s or whatever. Interestingly, though, and this is what I pointed out last week, if the show is intending to make Dracula the same person as Vlad the Impaler, then they got a little bit of their history wrong, because Vlad the Impaler, also called Dracula from the 1600s, was a member of the actual Order of the Dragon, which is an actual historical group. Well, in this particular adaptation, they're making him at odds with the Order of the Dragon, which isn't credible when it stacks up to history, but that's just another point there that I made last week, and I guess we'll just have to accept that the show is not only messing up Bram Stoker's book, but it's also messing around with the history books as well. Well, there's another aspect to the Order of the Dragon. It's not all oil and gas and business related, but like I've been mentioning, there is that thing of where they're at odds with vampires. They've got a whole vampire extermination or huntsman group, and that includes Lady Jane, the kind of blonde, older, slutty person who kind of has a thing for Dracula, but it seems like she's finding out that he is a vampire using a little bit of black magic. And there was that whole mirror scene. It was kind of weird where those people were looking through that mirror, and Dracula felt that presence of being watched and kind of lashed back at it, or whatever happened there. But I thought that was kind of interesting that they were using kind of that black magic thing. And then there was another interesting scene where Dracula claimed that he also has dabbled in the occult and made a coin disappear and reappear elsewhere. And so that whole thing happened. And speaking of not knowing how Dracula got to where he was when we first met him in his coffin there in episode 1, it does look like next week we are going to be getting into more of the history of Dracula and how he got to where he was. Maybe we're going to see him with his wife and how that happened, the wars he fought in, maybe how he became a vampire, maybe how he got in that coffin in the first place. Not sure, but in the scenes from next week, it does look like we're going to be seeing a little bit more of Dracula's personal history. So that should be cool. I wonder how they're going to reconcile that with the old history book. Interesting stuff going on with Jonathan and Mina. Everything seemed to be kind of going fine for a while. I guess let's back up the truck a little bit and say that Dracula has offered Jonathan a employment position. I guess we can call him Alexander Grayson here, since he's acting as his business self and not his vampire agenda. So Alexander Grayson, aka Dracula, offered Jonathan what seemed to be a public relations position, and which was interesting to see Jonathan's initial trepidation at that, which any good journalist would have, because, he's concerned about the public interest. He's concerned that he doesn't really know Alexander Grayson very well, or where he came from. His records are kind of wishy-washy or not very accessible, so he's got a little bit of trepidation, but all that nice house and all that cash, yeah, that'll sway you, especially when you're looking to get married and, not having a ton of money coming in already. So, turns out he did take the job with Mina's blessing, and so I found it funny. As soon as Dracula sat him down to begin, not even like a minute had gone by, and he was already asking for dirt on people. Of course, his agenda against members of the Order of the Dragon, and it turns out that Alexander Grayson did find some dirt, quote-unquote dirt, I suppose you could say, on one of those members who he found in a club kissing another man. And then, of course, Dracula had a card to play, a little bit of blackmail. Apparently, this guy from the Order of the Dragon had a wife and was an affluent man and wasn't really in the mood to come out as a homosexual. Of course, then Dracula had to give his little speech on homosexuality and open-mindedness because, as we all know, Dracula is the biggest gay rights activist villain in British literature. So there was that, and so now Dracula has a card to play in order to acquire more coolant from this guy from the Order of the Dragon, and so he can kind of bleed them out in a money-wise sense in hurt their industry. So he's got that whole thing going on. Meanwhile, Mina and Jonathan sure looks like they're going places. Jonathan takes that big job with Dracula, and then Mina passes her examination in school, her medical exam with flying colors, best in class, which apparently awards her that apprenticeship or assistant thing or internship, something with Van Helsing, so she apparently has that going on. So that's big news for her. She's got this, celebration thing. She's going out with Jonathan, and they're happy together until Jonathan makes an oops. Lets it slip, apparently, that he's not real happy about Mina's career choice. Doesn't really want her to be a career girl at all. Wants her to, stay at home and do, I think as he put it, womanly things or something like that. So he's not real supportive of Mina's dream. And Mina, standing right behind him, hearing every word, unbeknownst to Mr. Jonathan Harker. Looks like that is going to turn into quite a rough patch in their relationship. It almost looked like that could have been a place where they're going to break up. I don't see them breaking up Jonathan and Mina this early in the series. It's just episode 2, so I don't feel like this is a time where the breakup is going to happen really this soon, but I think they're just trying to show you that, things aren't perfect between Jonathan and Mina. They're having a little bit of trouble. Meanwhile, Alexander Grayson, kind of swooping in there on Mina, offers to give her a ride to school one day, and so they have a nice little ride in Dracula's carriage. Dracula gives her this nice little speech about following her heart and accomplishing her dreams, and so, he's kind of giving her some fulfillment maybe where Jonathan isn't. And so, kind of have it set up, like I said last week, they're trying to get you into this mode of thinking it's Team Jonathan versus Team Dracula or Team Alexander, whatever you want to call it. Really one thing that this entire show is doing, it's kind of one of those, Phantom of the Opera type things where they're trying to make it seem like, okay, yes, Dracula's the antagonist, but you kind of got to feel for him, you kind of got to get on his good side, at least in a ethos way, he's fighting corruption, he wants this nice woman, he wants to be in love, and he wants whatever, and it's like, okay, in Phantom of the Opera, I can take it, but with this, I don't know. At least Phantom of the Opera was a human, and here we've got a, blood-sucking zombie who's he has this conversation with Renfield. Renfield asks him, look, you've got it within your power, why don't you just take her? And he goes, oh, to turn her into such as I? That would be an abomination. Yo, Drac, you kidding me? You're a blood-sucking monster. You're a murderer, you're a deceiver. What do you know about abominations? Well, apparently, that's the noble side of Dracula, and like I'm telling you, they're trying to win you over. They're trying to have Dracula come off as somebody that you can feel for, someone that you can respect in some ways, and so they want you to kind of feel like, oh, maybe she doesn't belong with Jonathan, maybe she'd be better off with Dracula. All right, well, if you want to believe that, go ahead. It's just kind of ridiculous, but there you have it. That's really what's kind of going on here. Another thing I noticed about this past episode is the use of cars. It looked like Dracula and Renfield were in a car during at least one part of the episode, and I suppose that can be doable according to my research. Cars were first used in England in 1888, so very cool that they were utilizing that technology. Of course, I'm sure Alexander Grayson has the means and the cash to be able to probably afford many, many cars, so that was kind of cool. I just hope that he doesn't get a Vlad tire. Pun. All right, well, I would love for you to get involved in the Dracula podcast as a contributor to the conversation. A number of ways you can contact me. You can email draculapodcast@gmail.com, or we are on Twitter as well at Dracula Podcast, and also Facebook, Dracula Podcast with Frank Stella, and I would love for you to join in the conversation. Let me know what you think about the podcast. It's okay, you can tell me you hate it. I can take it. Tell me what you think about the show, and I do hope that you're giving Dracula the book a try. I'm sure it's at your library. I do highly recommend it, as I'm sure you can tell. It is a little bit more simplistic than this story that we're watching on NBC, but complexity doesn't always mean superiority. I mean, the episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars were much more complex than 4, 5, and 6, and you tell me which ones are better. So give Dracula the book a try. It is one of the best books I've ever read, as I've told you before, and we can talk about it online and be best friends. How about that? All right, the Dracula Podcast is a production of the Southgate Media Group. Until we talk again next week, my friends, good night.